Would you call yourself a socialist?
No.
You've never told a lie in politics?
No.
See, somebody sent me a video actually last Friday, and it had you talking at the Socialist Community.
Yes.
And you mentioned the word comrade about 4 times in a minute. What was that about?
It was a rally, and I would have been about 25 years old.
Comrade. So comrade.
That was in 2009.
Oh, well, I can't remember which country it was in.
Has it changed since those days?
No, not particularly. No.
If you are caught in a lie or caught intentionally misleading the New Zealand public, how would you expect to be held to account?
Well, I actually believe that it is possible to exist in politics without lying.
We drum in that messaging around the dangers of COVID pretty diligently for a full 2-week period of sustained propaganda.
Yes, hi. Well, it's John Ansell here with Jaspreet, and there's a particular reason why I thought we might chat again, Jaspreet. We have something else in common, apart from being heckled by David Seymour, and giving quite a good account of ourselves, I think, in each case. But we have something else. We've been harassed by the boys in blue, and I don't mean the National Party. And I was concerned at one stage that you were being harassed. Perhaps you could pick up the story. I can also tell my story about my encounter with the police on I think 3 occasions now. But yours was, to me, concerning, but you've actually fixed it, haven't you? So over to you, Jaspreet.
I have, John. Good evening. Now, I should begin by saying that I have had the greatest of respect for the boys in blue. Not too long ago, or in fact, quite a while ago, about 8 years ago, I used to be the literacy volunteer in one of our largest prisons, part of which has burnt down last summer. And I did work within the prison system for a while, with at-risk youth leaving. And now somehow times have changed, and I seem to find myself at the receiving end of a phone call pretty frequently for the last few months. Yeah.
Yes. And how did you deal with that?
It's in Invercargill, to Atapri, we're quite a small place as compared to, Auckland or somewhere else. And as you know, I'm the Voices for Freedom coordinator for this area. Initially, I was for all of Southland. Now a few other groups have propped up in other areas, Thienau and Gore and so on. And as a database manager for them, I help people who need to be connected, who need some sort of, legal help, or some occasionally, mostly emotional support with what all of us are going through, with what dear leader is putting us through. So initially, the phone calls used to be more on the lines of, are you guys having a pop-up? Which means standing out with a few signs or at one of the intersections or something, and which was fine. One kept answering them that, yeah, we might be, or a few of the concerned citizens might be. And about a couple of weeks ago, I got a call again from the boys in blue in Invercargill, and I was asked, there was a very odd tone to the phone call, or so I felt. I was told, good evening, this is a welfare check. And I thought, all right. I said, I'm fine. How are you guys doing? Oh, I was told, how are you dealing with the backlash to this issue, which obviously is the enforced vaccination mandates? And I was like, I'm all right. It is a polarizing issue. I expect brickbats. But then the tone changed, and I was asked, and as you know, I'm a homeschooling mum, and occasionally both my kids come with me if my husband can't have them on the farm. And I was asked, do you think your kids are safe coming out with you? And they
to
said,
the protests. Yeah.
Generally, when I'm out and about in Invercargill, and I seem to be driving more often than I used to. I am nearly 80 kilometers from Invercargill. And so that's where the tone went. And I was sort of dumbfounded, to be honest. I couldn't think of a suitable response for such a question because it just came out of left field. So I tried to ask, what do you mean? And they were generally like, we see you are heckled by people, and do you think your children are safe coming out with you? So that, as a mother, I think all my hackles were raised, my guard went up, and we sort of fumbled through the phone call, and I hung up. But I have, yes, as you say, I've had to go to the cops, ask for a formal meeting on this and have this issue out, that what exactly did they have? Because you can imagine, as a parent, and my children are quite young, my immediate question was that, do they know of some threat against my kids or something? Why is this tone of questioning? Where is this line of questioning going?
Or are they making some sort of veiled threat? What business is it well, it's nice that they're so concerned about your welfare, especially if they're going to give you a check. No, I'm kidding. But it's a sinister time where we don't necessarily regard the servants of the state as being on our side. So I think you were entitled to be somewhat rattled by that. And I was worried about you as well, because
normally I wouldn't be this paranoid.
No.
This is not me. But yeah, I think the times we are living through, and when you have, I don't have any family in the country. It's my 2 children, my husband and me. And as a homeschooling mom, and occasionally I don't have places to leave my children. So they come with me wherever mom goes.
I mean, it's not as though you were going on something hostile. You were going on a protest. It's a legitimate part of our democracy, especially when our Prime Minister is murdering people, children. And why would the police be taking sides, I wonder? Anyway, there's a silver lining to that cloud, isn't there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there is. So I have spoken to them about this, and I was told, because I specifically asked to meet them, because so far this gentleman who was calling me was just a voice on the phone, and I wanted to put a face to the name. And, he obviously, I'm pretty sure he knew what I looked like, but I didn't know what he looked like. And so we met, and I asked him whether they know of any specific threat against my children, and I was told no, absolutely not. I think they were a bit taken aback to realize that their phone call had left me, as a mom of young kids, very worried. And I'm understating this. I was extremely worried for those couple of weeks before I managed to have this issue out. Just imagining the worst in my head.
Yes, I mean, there was an incident in Australia, wasn't there? I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yes, that was very interesting. I don't know if you followed this gentleman. Let me see if I can get his name right. He is Alan Hesham. So he is a Lebanese Aussie. I am just trying to... Yeah, Alan Hesham. So it's ALAN and HASHEM. And he is someone who's been making videos of children who've suffered adverse events in Australia for a while. And he's from Beirut. If you look at his Facebook page, he has over 10,000 followers. And sometime over the last 2 months, there was one of his children went missing. And I saw a whole lot of sinister comments there, because he obviously went off Facebook for a while, and one saw a whole lot of comments there about people saying, oh, have you been silenced, this, that, and the other. The child was found, I believe, 48 hours later, just a bit dehydrated, about 500 meters away from where his house is. But yes, as I tell you, as a mom, your brain goes into overdrive when it's your children that are threatened in any which way.
Yeah. So that had not long happened when this started to happen, this sort of what you were quite entitled, I think, to perceive as a form of harassment or very sinister insinuation, I suppose, started to happen. And but I'm pleased that you mentioned the other day that you'd sorted it out. It was at a rally, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think they realized how worried I was after that. And when it comes to your child's welfare, I at least am not diplomatic. I was pretty tactless when I put it out to them that how worried I was and what do they know. And I think, as I said, they were pretty much taken aback, and they backpedaled on this, that there's nothing they know. They were just worried that traffic and roadsides, you stand next to the Anzac Cenotaph and Invercargill. But there are lots of other children there. People bring along a rugby ball. There's drinks and food for kids. And there's lots of us parents watching out for our children. There are over a dozen children every single time at these protests, over a dozen, and
Are
nobody
you
else
aware?
got a phone call.
Nobody else. I was going to ask. Nobody else got a phone call. No, I don't think we can be naive about this. I've had some experiences as well. After the Christchurch massacre, when people were being visited, people on the right of politics were being visited by armed policemen with submachine guns, multiple policemen with submachine guns, and being asked if they were Trump supporters. Questions like that, illuminating, highly relevant to Muslim massacre questions like that. And I said on Facebook that if they came to see me, I would live stream it to 5 continents plus Greenland, where I have an Eskimo friend, which is an ironic thing to say, but she did call herself an Eskimo, funnily enough, not an Inuit. She was a student passing through Auckland University. But yes, but when it actually happened, some months later, I was not expecting a knock on the door, and I thought it was someone to come to spray the hedge. So I opened the door, and there was a policeman. And he wanted to know my views on the Treaty of Waitangi. You know, and you might ask, what does that have to do with the murder of 51 Muslims by an Australian? But this was clearly all part of the harassment of people that Comrade Ardern wished to be perceived as white supremacists. I have a bit of a track record standing up for the reprehensible concept of equal citizenship, which in this balmy day and age, in this sort of la-la land,
Polarized world we live
that
in,
qualifies, yes, that qualifies someone to be suspected as a racist and an intending atrocity committer, the next terrorist. They seem to be wanting to sort of edge people towards that, which I'm just not in the mood. I'm just not the mass murdering type. I've hardly mass murdered anyone all week. So I said, well, okay, since you're not accompanied and you don't appear to be wielding a submachine gun, come in and I'll tell you everything I can tell you, and you would never have learnt at school, about the Treaty of Waitangi, and I'll tell you what I think of the police. So for the next 2 hours, I did that, and he was much enlightened. And 2 hours later, he left, and basically agreeing with me. Really, he seemed to have my welfare at heart. He did a good job of at least pretending that. He actually told me. He said, "I have." I've been to see some actual white supremacists, and they're really worried right now. He was concerned for their safety as well, supposedly. But he said, so I said, so you don't think I am one? Oh, no, certainly not. No. But I said to him at the time, when the communist takeover does come, for real, you'll have to decide whether you stand with the communist bullies or whether you'll stand with the people that you're sworn to serve. And we parted on good terms. Well, the other day it happened again. After I was visited by 2 musketeers from the police, 2 junior officers, or junior, I don't know, what's under an officer? You tell me, Brigadier.
I'm not sure.
Yes, 2 ordinary cops. And they were trying to intimidate me. They didn't do all that well, I don't think. But that was after I'd had a few chats with the local MP and Chief Government Whip, or a few words anyway, in one chat, which you may have seen, where they tried to say that I was threatening our beloved MPs, and I assured them that I wasn't threatening them. I was merely assuring them that they would, in the fullness of time, if they continued on their present path, be arrested, tried, and executed in accordance with international law. That would be what I would suggest anyway, which is a far cry from threatening violence, isn't it? Immediate violence. Some would say there's a subtle distinction. I think there's a very, very clear distinction. Anyway, and during that, rather like your little encounter, one of them said to me, while apparently assuring me that he meant no harm, suddenly observed that my hand was shaking. And it actually wasn't, but I responded, well, I'm bit nervous, having a couple of armed cops on my doorstep, and I thought, you clever sods, because it wasn't shaking, as I saw on the video later, and that was just an attempt to sort of embarrass me in front of what he thought was a live Facebook audience, because I was filming him at the time.
The CDC actually doesn't consider you vaccinated unless you've survived to day 14 after your second dose. So anybody in those studies and reporting the data that dies or gets an infection or has to be hospitalized because their immune system's harmed by the vaccine, that counts towards the unvaccinated.
But as the science makes clear, if you're fully vaccinated, you're highly protected.
There were excess numbers of people dying after the vaccine that were being reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, exceeding the level of comfort. So those who we want to protect the most with the vaccines are failing.
Yes, I know you're vaccinated. You're the smart ones, but you know there's people out there who aren't listening to God and what God wants. You know who they are.
If you look back in history, that's always the way tyranny has begun, by identifying and ostracizing certain groups of people in society.
For the vast majority of you who've gotten vaccinated, I understand your anger at those who haven't gotten vaccinated. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
And I thought, that's clever, isn't it? And that was the bit that appeared on the news, or there were two bits. One of the rant to McAnulty, one statement to McAnulty, and then that statement. I thought, that could have been cooked up in advance. So I said this when the door was knocked upon again a few days ago, and I didn't answer because I wanted to film. If the cops were coming, I wanted to film them, and I was scrambling for my camera at that point. It was sort of somewhere else, so I didn't answer the door. Then I got a phone call, and from a number I didn't recognize, and I thought, I wonder if that's the cops actually checking whether I'm actually at home or wherever I am, wondering where I am. And I thought, don't be so paranoid, that's silly. I'll just answer it. So I answered it, and it was the cops, and it was the same cop. It was the same cop that came 2 years ago, called Rob, and I said, Rob. I didn't know it was you. If I'd known it was you, I would have answered it. He said, I'll come round again. I said, yeah, come round. We'll have another chat. So we had a 45-minute chat this time. I let him off lightly. And same sort of thing. He, it was an amicable chat, and he wanted to know, how I was, purportedly, going around checking on all the people of interest. I could have been insulted. But instead I thought, fair enough. I've had a visit from those two masked loons, and he might be the next. They might have given up doing that and gone back to the previous amicable discussion format. But, during it, he saw my guitar, and all I actually said, I used the guitar to, get some light relief in life, at difficult times. I'm teaching myself to play it, and he said, you might take it to the protest on Thursday. And I thought, clever, wants to know if I'm going to the protest on Thursday. So I said, no, I don't think I will. Then I thought, and I started to get a bit paranoid. I thought, I wonder if old Rob is trying to set up some sort of home invasion while I'm away or something. It actually occurred to me to park the car around the corner and stay home and see if they sort of broke in to sort of bug me or anything, or wanted to. But in the end, I went off to the protest anyway, and nothing happened. But, I know what it's like to, I think we are right to feel a wee bit concerned about what the police are thinking, because I said to him before, depends whether you're going to align with the communists or stand with your people. I said the same thing again. I said, remember what I said 2 years ago, Well, now the communist takeover has come, and the question still remains. He he gave me to believe that he didn't think that was going to happen. And I said, well, if are you going to turn into the Nazis in Australia, which, the police in Australia are pretty much, the brown shirts or the black shirts. But anyway, those are two experiences that we've had, and I thought we both of us handled them pretty well, and I think we had to send them a message, and hopefully other people will do the same. They may get tougher on us, hopefully not, but hopefully they will be on our side.
For
we
me,
can reach their
this was my
consciences.
first ever brush with the law other than one traffic ticket. And I'm speaking about the 13 years I've been in New Zealand. And this is very unnerving. Oh, I mean, I can pretend to be all bluster and bravado, but when you start talking about my kids and my kids not being safe, it's not just me. I think any mom would react the way I did. I didn't immediately get back. I took a couple of weeks to think it over. And no matter whichever angle I tried to, reason it out in my mind, it didn't make any sense to me that why were my children picked out of more than a dozen there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, I want to congratulate you for doing that. I was worried on your behalf.
Thank you.
When you told me this on the phone, and I thought I would be rattled if I was relative to me, young mother. I was a young mother myself once, but and I wouldn't have liked to have been in that position. It's easier for me now when I don't have anybody else here. But I would have been rattled in rural Southland, on a farm with a long way between you and the next person. But you fronted up basically when you encountered some police at a rally. I think you, as they would say in Australia, shirt fronted them. I think that's what Tony Abbott used to say, whatever that means, shirt fronted. You fronted up, you fronted them, and you kind of called their bluff a bit, or you got them to reveal their humanity, I suppose.
When we were marching, the cops have started putting a couple of cop cars on either side of us. And I just walked up to one of the cop cars and I asked him, I said, do you have this, can you confirm whose number is this? And whatever that phone number starts with, he said, yep, that's a New Zealand police number. And I said, can you have a look and see, do you have this number in your phone? So you might know. And he said, yep, he confirmed the first and last name of the gentleman who'd been calling me and who I should have has been perfectly cordial till even, on whether it's phone calls asking, is Voices of Freedom doing something or how are things in generally. But I said, I'd like to put a face to the name. And he says, why? So I just showed him my call log. I said, we've spoken already more than half a dozen times in the last few weeks. So I think it's time we make each other's acquaintance in person since I am in town. Yeah. So they got in touch with this gentleman who's been calling me. And we met at the Anzac Cenotaph once the march was done. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for you. That's really what I wanted to have this little podcast for, to congratulate you, to show people that we are. There's no justification for anybody believing that we are some sort of criminals. We're standing up for our country. The question is, are they? So you stood up to them, and you got the result you wanted. My criminal record was blotted today, thanks to you, because of our podcast the other day. I was listening to it back on the way to Masterton to meet somebody. I was listening to it to see how we did, and I was hauled over by the cops who'd seen my cell phone a little bit elevated because I was bringing it closer to my ear. It was still down in my midriff area, but it was obviously poking above the window. And I was charged with a $150 fine. I wasn't. He said, use of a mobile phone. I said, well, I was using it in the way that I use a radio. I mean, I could have had the radio on. It's not a crime to have the radio on. And he said, oh, yes, but I don't know if it's a bit hard to tell whether you were texting or not. And I said, well, I was not. You could not see that I was, but that was because I wasn't. Oh yes, but it's 150. We take seatbelt wearing and not wearing of seatbelts and use of cell phones very seriously. And I said, well, is it illegal to drive with one hand on the steering wheel? Because that, I was doing that because I had my other hand on the cell phone. No, it's not. I said, well, there you are. so we reached an impasse, but I don't think that was very fair. He said, oh, you could have had you should have had headphones on or put it on the chair next to you. And I said, you think that it would have been safer to drive with headphones on, earphones on, where I couldn't hear anything, including you, I mean, this is madness. But anyway, it wasn't his. It wasn't. I wasn't really trying to take it out on him. He might have come to my house someday. They're the only people that ever come. But I didn't want to start. I don't need any more enemies right now. So I suppose I'll just suck it up. Maybe I'll send the bill to you, Jaspreet.
There's an idea.
It was you're probably just as liable as I am, because you were talking on that.
About projection, John.
On that podcast, and I think we should split the bill.
Should we? I should be handed over to Grant.
Should we? She says, should we? Anyway, that was all I wanted to get across this time. Unless you have anything else, any sort of update on the situation that you'd like to talk about.
No, this week has been good. I haven't had a call from the cops this week. We, in fact, had sort of a Christmas picnic this afternoon in town, and no, haven't seen hide or hair of the men in blue.
Oh.
And as I said, I've had the greatest of respect for them, for New Zealand police. At one point,
yes.
was working within the system as a volunteer, but yeah, times certainly have changed, and I find it incredibly hard to believe how far we've come in so short a time. What's happening to us?
I think they will have renewed respect. If they didn't have any before, they'll have a great deal of respect for you. Meeting you in person, I imagine, is a formidable experience. I haven't had that experience. I make sure I stay well away from you and interact by phone only, and stay in another island, just because you could get very fierce, I imagine, if I got on the wrong side of you, as the policeman found out.
You'd be very disappointed if you meet me. I am mostly a harmless person.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
really?
You have a very good name around the country now. You'd be amazed at the number of people who've heard of you. And I met one today.
I don't know. I've spent a decade talking to myself in the echo chamber that Facebook is. And something has happened this year. People are listening.
Yep. Well, you've got that formidable intellect. I did check out your academic. I said, I bet you were the head of your ducks of your school, and you confessed to being something in the top 3 in your state or something, weren't you?
Yeah, I was.
That's something.
God, that makes it sound like, gosh, I was on the dean's list in Macy as well during my accounting degree.
A very small state, a very small state, I'm sure. How many millions in your state?
Let's just do the course. The course that I did would have about 2,000 people that year.
Yeah, just the 2,000. But how many in the state anyway?
How many in the state? There'd be well over 30 million. But just the course. We will only do the course that I was
talk
doing.
About yes, to preserve your yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Your modesty. That's right. Anyway, there's been a terrible situation on the COVID front, on the vaccine front, or the vaccine front, with the death of a young lady, very, very bright and talented singer in North Auckland, and we'll see what happens there. But it could well be a significant game changer.
Incredibly hard.
Yeah. She died of a horrendous sort of hemorrhage, blood stroke, I think, at the age of 16. And it's just the latest. And I tell you what, today for me, I was spiraling around there trying to remember what I was meaning to talk about. And I learnt today that a friend here in Martinborough, or a chap that has been to my house twice to fix windows, he has died. I haven't checked out the status relative to the vaccine, but he was a very healthy man, so we shall see. But I won't be too premature, but I'm expecting it to be relative. He had a brain aneurysm, which is one of the standard, one of the telltale signs.
I have this afternoon put a post on the Farming Mums Forum. It's got 14,000 members in New Zealand. Just wanting to ask what is other mums, farming ladies' viewpoint towards Fonterra now going towards mandating vaccination for COVID for the tanker workers and the factory workers as of now. And there's quite a few comments going back and forth on it. And this person has literally just commented on this post as we were talking, and she says, I don't agree at all with mandating. Had written a fairly comprehensive letter to Fonterra with her feedback on this. I know a farming mom's teenager, a boy, absolutely healthy prior to this, currently having major issues with blood pressure, heart, and he's not the only one.
My name is Dr. Christina Parks. I received my PhD in cellular and molecular biology right here in the state of Michigan from University of Michigan Medical School. So I'm very well versed in the science of both these mRNA, gene therapy, vaccines, and the fact that this is extremely complex science that has been oversimplified in the media to basically take away our freedom of choice. Do the vaccines for COVID prevent transmission? No.
Suddenly, I mean, I don't know what your benchmark is, but for me, prior to this year, I knew no kids with heart issues. I did know two, but both of them were congenital, were born at Starship, and these were pre-existing issues that they were born with. Now,
more to the point,
Now I have teenagers. Every day I hear of teenagers.
Every day. I think more to the point, doctors have never experienced this level of suffering. We may not have been aware of it, but they would have been aware of it. And they're saying this all over the world, aren't they? It's beyond, it's undeniable, surely, now, but only by intelligent people.
I have a mate down the road, about 4 kilometers from here. She and her husband worked on the very farm we manage now. They lived in the same house that I live in now. And this is a big farm. They moved to a smaller job down the road, just literally minutes down the road. She, after her second vaccination, she's someone who fell down in the medical center as the shot was going in, brought the gurney down with her and everything.
Yes.
You're talking of a farming mom who could milk 500 cows solo and then go and coach high school netball.
Yeah.
She will now not pick up my phone because, as in her voice, she says, and I messaged her last night if she wants to come over, and she says, I'm not sure, Jaspreet. I did a phone interview with Southland Times and also the journalist Melanie Reid. I never heard anything about it. Then she adds, plus since the COVID jab, I feel as though I can no longer speak English properly. I can't think of words. I feel like a toddler on occasions. I avoid most social interactions now because I don't know when stupidness is going to take over. That is why I prefer to PM, so personal message, or text you so I can go over things. I find it hard to find for words. What is she written? I still can't find a lot of words in my brain when I'm talking. So texting is easier.
That's what Casey Hodgkinson and many others talk about, brain fog. Casey doesn't look like the sort of person who would be foggy in the brain normally, but she can recognize that she's foggy now and she can't remember certain things. And
I know close to
happening everywhere.
5 people. I mean, I know immediately. So if I know 5, how many do other people know? These are people I know in flesh and blood. These are not cases I've heard across the internet. This woman was perfectly fine. And 3 ACC appeals. I mean, the doctors are not even sending it forward. Everything is non-related. Swelling, lymph nodes, and breast tissue, and everything is related to older issues. We have got the ACC advocate, Jeanette Brock, trying to help this mate of mine. Nothing.
Yes. She's doing wonderful work. I was saying, I think these podcasts are piling up. I think it was this morning I was on a podcast with Liz Lambert and Grant, and I think I was talking about at Parliament. There was a girl on a gurney shaking violently, being hauled off from the grounds to the ambulance near where I was standing, and that seemed to me to be similar to what we're hearing about the likes of Casey. She was shaking uncontrolled. Now, was that a reaction to a vaccine? It rather seemed, but maybe it wasn't. It could have been an epileptic fit or something. But just to see that happening in front of you was very chilling, and not at all unconnected with some of the videos we've been seeing of people suffering from post-vaccine injuries. So it could have just been a coincidence. It could have been that my friend here in Martinborough was a coincidence. It
So
could have
is my
been that it was a coincidence that I've heard so many sirens. It's hard to think that one of them might have been him. I don't want to overstate the friendship, by the way. It's just one of the many people that we interact with around the town. But it's chilling reading the Facebook pages and all the people that I know that knew him. And but I don't want to, presume that was a vax injury. I just got a funny feeling it would have been. It's
am
just happening
amazed
everywhere
how
all the time.
people are being asked to prove. The onus of proof needs to be on the medical profession to rule out the shot. I know my mate was fine. She was busy carving. Everything was well, preparing for a meeting to start on the farm. Today, this person refuses to pick up a phone call from me because, you and I are now talking, as I'm speaking, you in your head are probably fashioning a sort of reply. She can't do that in real time, so she prefers texting.
Amazing. There's a girl who is a woman now that was in a girl band. I won't say who, but a famous New Zealand girl band. There haven't been that many. One of those made-for-TV ones. She happens to be a Facebook friend of mine. I don't know her personally, but somehow we sort of became Facebook friends. And she is clearly on the pro-vaccine side, and she had been on her posts saying, come on, guys, get vaxxed and do it for the team and all that. And then one post she put up was, gee, I've noticed a lot of sirens lately. Anybody else noticed a lot of sirens? She's in Auckland, I think, possibly central Auckland. I've heard that the sirens in central Auckland near the hospitals have been going crazy. But I'm not in Auckland. I'm in rural Wairarapa, and I've been noticing sirens to the point where when they start up, I go out on the porch and I make a live video. Actually, not live. I've been banned, so I post them later. but I make a video, and I did that twice in 2 days, because each time it wasn't the first time that day. In fact, I think it was the third. The first time I did it, it was the third time that day, and then it happened the next day. In fact, it happened while I was making the video. It started up again, and this is a town of 1,600 people. Then today I went up to Masterton and I was talking about this, and they were saying, the people I was with were saying the same thing in Masterton. And Masterton is, I think, probably a small city as they go, maybe 20-something thousand. So, yes, and this girl, this girl band member, former girl band member, had all sorts of people coming in saying the same thing. Wherever they lived, they've been noticing this. So extraordinary coincidences, don't you think? And why would that be? And then, of course, we've got the madness of them not only overstressing the workers in those emergency services, but laying them off because they don't want to have time bombs in their blood tunnels. They don't want them to be the next victim that they would have to attend to. It gets a bit circular, doesn't it? It's madness. It can only be deliberate, you would think. Let's lay off the nurses, yet make more business for the nurses. Only a very cynical government would do that.
These are children now, really young children. The way I think, the way I see, there's been a great purge of critical thinkers from medicine, education, and what was Mao's this thing? I'm forgetting it. Was it in the 60s when he called it the 100 Roses, and he says, "Let 100 roses bloom." He invited people to criticize him, academics, poets, artists. And then came the systematic cull. And then what was left? They converted. Yeah.
In other words, he invited them to criticize him so he could find out who they were.
Yeah.
And then kill them.
Yeah.
Yes, clever, eh? Anyway, Jaspreet, I know that our host, Mr. Edwards, is a bit knackered after a hard day's building, I think. So we should probably let him off. I think we've covered what I was hoping to cover, just talking about our encounters with the police. All is not lost. I mean, if the policemen are genuine, not double-crossing us, then perhaps they mean well, and perhaps we are not going to get the full-scale
The men I met were
communist
certainly reassuring.
bullying.
Yeah, and I'm glad I met them. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've still got to figure out who those soldiers are in the Marlborough Sounds, however, as we talked about before. Did we talk about that?
We didn't, not today. I don't think we've talked on air about it because you came to know of it first.
Yes. Well, I must have been. I was talking about it with Liz, I think. Yes, for some reason, somebody stumbled upon a masses of soldiers. Massive was the word that the person used. Camp full of soldiers who were European but not New Zealand, and they took a dim view of this encroaching person. And that's rather chilling. And that was between Pelorus and Linkwater in the Marlborough Sounds, not a heck of a long way from here. And just makes you think, are they goodies or baddies? What is going on? But hopefully someone who will fly over and take a picture and confirm that. It would be nice if that person that posted that was fantasizing, just a bad dream. But, I don't think so. There's something going on. There were 600 Italian troops reported to be in Christchurch. And then it was said that, that was something to do with some sort of Antarctic thing. I don't know what interests the Italians have got in the Antarctic. I didn't quite grasp that. So they could be the same ones. And also on the same podcast, a gentleman called Max, I think, came on and said that the UN, your favourite organisation, this is Jaspreet Boparai, who has some issues with the United Nations. Her father was in the military, serving under the United Nations.
For 18 months,
India. Yeah. And apparently the UN has an office in Wellington now. And apparently there are, according to this chap anyway, there are sort of troops scurrying around there. So I can't confirm any of that, but I think it's responsible of anybody calling themselves an investigator, as we're all sort of becoming now, to just mention these things that have come up and see if they solidify. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But we do live in extraordinary times. But when we do encounter the boys in blue, I think we should do what you did and front them up and see if they're human beings, see if they recognize that you're a human being. And I would imagine your one would have been suitably chastened to encounter Brigadier Boparai in the flesh, and he may not do it again now.
At the end of the day, you and I look at myself, a farming mom between work and kids and all, just going out to town and having a say. Hardly the picture of, enemies of the state.
No, that's right. That's what I tried to assert when I was visited after the Christchurch massacre, as though I was, one of the people likely to be the next terrorist, because I'd expressed certain views about the legitimacy of the treaty partnership. I don't think that makes me a mass murderer, and I still don't think I'm a mass murdering type. I know I'm not a murderer because I had Jacinda Ardern in my sights after the several days after the massacre in an airport lounge, and she remained alive throughout, despite my then wife saying that the look on my face was one of pure hatred.
You can't take what's normally a decade-long process for developing a product and ensuring its safety and efficacy and compressing it into 6 to 9 months and not cut some corners. That's just absurd.
Does it bother you that the news network you work for just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Do you understand that that's why people get concerned about the veracity of the news?
What do they say, John? If looks could kill?
Yeah, well, I think that was the impression I was trying to convey. Well, maybe I just couldn't help it, but I could see straight through her. I've subsequently learnt that she was likely involved in the planning of the massacre to enable Tarrant to obtain the guns. So rather ironic that the police should visit me 3 times when they, according to high-level information that I've received, were complicit in the thing that that I was being sort of implicated that I might like to perform the sequel to. Same with Lee Williams was another one who he was visited multiple times in order to, I think, intimidate his wife and to break up their marriage, and they succeeded. They had 15 cops in his street at one stage to try to gee him up, I think, because he was he's a sort of gruff talking North of England guy. He sounds a bit rough, like he might be the massacring type, football hooligan type. I'm not doing your voice. If you're listening to this, Lee, as you might at some stage, I know I'm not doing your voice very well. Lee's a lovely guy. He's now back in England. He still thinks fondly of us, and he's still posting about things that he observes over here. But he's not the massacring type.
As adults, I think all issues, amiable and thorny, need to be talked out. We have reached the stage where we cancel discussion. For you to be, to be sort of interrogated by a policeman about your views about the treaty, would you ever be given a public forum to speak about it? No.
No.
Cancelling seems to be the safer option.
Yeah, I know. And all we're doing is standing up for our country and our children in this case. I mean, what is the crime again? What is the crime? I mean, these guys that are interviewing us are more criminal than we are. In their going along with, I said to this guy, in 2 years ago, I said to this chap, this policeman, I said, you may have given me a pass mark, but I said that probably won't save me in a full-on takeover if you decide to align yourself with your employer. If you have the guts to stand apart from your employer and leave, as many people are now, in fact, good on you. But most police around the world do actually become the goons, don't they? And I said, my question is who's pulling your strings and who's pulling hers? And but I was pleased that I was able to stand up to him, and so were you. You were in a much more vulnerable position, however. And I wish you all the best, and I hope that you've scared them off, given them no further reason to regard you as any kind of threat. And
hopefully come across as a pretty harmless New Zealander.
Yes, and but whether that's enough to save us depending on if they become hostile in the fully fledged communism. But let's hope we're all fantasizing about that. Anyway, Grant, I can hear Grant snoring in the corner there, so we should let him go. And Jaspreet Boparai. Thank you very much. This is John Ansell for the Liberty NZ podcast.
Now, I've heard this from an arms officer for the New Zealand Police. He said in 2018, despite rigorous recommendations against it, Jacinda Ardern chaired the group who deliberately changed the Arms Act that allowed the terrorist Brendan Tarrant to evade vetting procedures and to be the first person to ever have his gun licence fast-tracked. Now, just let that sink in for a minute.
If you look at the side effects of these things, blood clots, myocarditis, inflammation of hearts, increase in miscarriages from 10 to 80% in the first trimester, increases in cancer, increases in autoimmune diseases, ovarian dysfunction, most likely infertility. And that's not to mention the genocidal potential effect of antibody-dependent enhancement. Why the hell would you put that into a child when they have a near 100% chance of recovery from a infection that is safer than influenza virus?
We need you to stay in your home for a couple weeks. It's for the greater good. We need you to close your business just for a short time. It's for the greater good. We need you to stay home just a little bit longer than 2 weeks. It's for the greater good. We need you to wear this on your face. It's for the greater good. We need you to wear 2 of these on your face. It's for the greater good. We need you to inject this into your body. It's for the greater good. We need you to spend the holidays alone. It's for the greater good. You must inject this into your body if you want to feed your family. It's for the greater good. We need you to stop eating that. It's not good for the environment. It's for the greater good. We need you to stop driving your car and flying. It's for the greater good. We need you to stop heating your home so often. It's for the greater good. We need you to stop saying that. It's hurting some people's feelings. This is for the greater good. We need you to stop having children. It's not good for the planet. This is for the greater good. We need you to stop talking about your faith. It's offending people. This is for the greater good. We need to separate you from your children because you're not complying. This is for the greater good. We need to hold you in a facility for a little while for not cooperating. This is for the greater good.